Well, folks, thanks for joining us again today and joining the growing crowd of people who are tuning into Stock All Day, day-to-day news and giving you the alternate news and giving you information behind the big stories every day, stuff that you will not get on mainstream media. Many people are indicating that that is very helpful to them. We're going to cover a lot of wild stuff, politics, possible, could the government fall in Canada? What's happening in terms of world markets. We're going to talk about everybody from the president to, people like MR.BEAST. And we're going to hear about grizzly bear attacks and how you can survive them. So let's get right into it. The Canadian media follow pretty much the course of mainstream media in other countries. And that is when a conservative party seems to be on the rise and looks like might even form a government, the mainstream media becomes incensed. They just can't believe that the entire population does not follow leftist, culturally Marxist points of view, and are very upset when it looks like a country might stop voting liberal left. That's certainly been the case here in Canada. And those of you in the U.S. would know this. The conservative leader, Pierre Poilievre, who actually worked for me a long time ago, and then he got smart and headed out on his own. He's been having, up until the recent Trump effect, remarkable success bringing the Conservative Party of Canada way out front in the polls, looking like they were going to win the next election. And then with some fast head-spinning turnaround stuff coming out from what we call the Trump effect and tariffs and everything else, things kind of turn around. However, he did get more conservatives elected than has ever been elected in quite a while, and he raised the numbers of support. But he is getting the daily pounding in media that most conservative leaders get around the world. In fact, they're really going after him on stories that would seem a bit bizarre, but you have to take all these things into effect. What mainstream media don't account for is the fact that even though they completely just go after him on every single issue, all day long, every day, they are infuriated, that's mainstream media, because the liberals continue to go down in the polls and the conservatives continue to go up in the polls. And the hilarious thing is the media, of course, say that this has nothing to do with the conservative leader. It's just, I guess, by the way the wind is blowing. And it would be the first time in history that a party's popularity rose, and it wasn't because of the leader. So what's been happening recently is pretty interesting to watch, because over the last year, because of the persistence of Canada's official opposition conservative leader, the federal liberals have done a complete somersault and flip-flop on a number of issues. The leader of the Conservative Party federally hounded and pounded the liberals month after month after month on the carbon tax and how destructive that was going to be. And finally, we started to see in the polling, Canadians less and less supporting the so-called carbon tax, because obviously it's a false measure and it's highly destructive and it does nothing to do to help the environment. But that came down so much that the Liberals turned their point of view. They did a somersault on that and made a commitment to get rid of the carbon tax. We saw an identical thing happen, and this was more recently in the area of criminal justice, where Pierre Poilievre and the federal Conservatives have been really focused on safety in the cities, and dealing with bail reform, because just as in the United States, just so many stories, one after another, of awful crimes that are being happening on the streets, or break-ins in homes and murders and killings and things that go with that. And consistently, it's done by people who have been in and out of jail many times, and many times, even when they get booked on a very serious crime, they show up, they get a bail hearing, and they're out almost immediately. And that has really finally, over the last year or so, really grabbed the imagination of Canadians, and they've said enough of that, and they started turning on the Liberals. And so just this last week, in a remarkable somersault flip turnaround, Prime Minister Carney has announced he's going to bring in bail reform. Now, just as in the Democratic Party in the U.S., where the people on the left wing and the far left fringe of the Democrat Party won't let the Democrats start to sound normal, you've got a lot of severe left-leaning liberals. Most liberals in Canada are left-leaning, but the severe ones are really upset with the Prime Minister at daring to want to bring in bail reform, which would keep serious, repeat, violent offenders off the street. Again, Poilievre turning that around. In the area of budgeting, we see the Conservatives and Pierre Poilievre have been relentless in pointing out that liberal economic policies, basically socialist economic policies, will always result in a stagnating economy, will always result in less jobs being available, will always result in an increase of the debt, therefore an increase in the debt payments that a government has to make, and in the end, less money for social programs than conservative policies, which tend to want to go with less taxation. So that's really been a forefront issue, and it's going to come to the forefront next week, November 4th. The federal Liberals and Prime Minister Carney is bringing down their budget, and the Conservatives, again, have been relentless in terms of saying the deficit has to be brought down because people, anybody who knows how to even or try to balance a budget at home in these tough times knows that you can't keep borrowing when the income does not match the borrowing levels. And the Conservatives have been really hard on this issue, saying they want to see the deficit drop to a mere $42 billion, which is gigantic, but the Liberals are planning even higher than that, and they want to see some tax reduction also. So we're going to see where these go if on November 4th the Liberals address that in the budget. If they don't, we see a lot of chatter in media about the fact that the Liberals, who do not have a controlling majority in the House of Commons in Canada, if they don't get the necessary votes, then of course the government could fall. Now they're pretty close to having enough. They have 172 seats, and there are 393 seats all over in the House of Commons. Excuse me, I'm going to do a correction there. They have 169 seats. They need 172 votes to be able to protect their government and not to fall. So they'll be looking to get 3 votes from some of the opposition parties. We don't know if that's going to happen because all the opposition parties are following the lead of Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives and have great concerns about the budget. So stay tuned, folks. Next week, let's see if the Canadian government stands or falls. Another area where, everything possible where mainstream media in Canada can absolutely try to shred the Conservative leader, they will do that. And the latest has been the Conservative leader, Pierre Poilievre, did some commentary on a talk show some time ago. In it, he was criticizing certain elements, not the entire RCMP, but certain elements within the RCMP, that's Canada's National Police Force. Media who always, mainstream media who are relentless in terms of attacking police in general, and certainly Canada's police, just as in the States, you see the same thing. Now the media is absolutely upset because they think that the Conservative leader, Pierre Poilievre, was being too nasty in his remarks and maybe even suggesting that former Prime Minister Trudeau should have been arrested. Now, the Conservative leader, Pierre Poilievre, has walked back some of those remarks and clarified them, but fascinating to see how the mainstream media suddenly had a newfound love for policing in the country and rushed to condemn Pierre Poilievre for having harsh comments about some of the leadership in the RCMP. The area of double hypocrisy on this is that the mainstream media, being the megaphone, the mouthpiece for the federal Liberal Party, has echoed what Prime Minister Carney has said, in that if the Prime Minister of Israel, and we talked about this a couple of days on the show, was to come to Canada, he would have him arrested because of this grotesque configuration called the International Criminal Court, which, of course, the International Criminal Court does not have the support of the largest nations in the world. It does not have the support of the African Union. But, of course, liberal, left-leaning Canada rushes to give support to this international criminal court, which really has no jurisdiction. And because of that, Prime Minister Carney has continued to say he will have Benjamin Netanyahu, who is the prime minister of a vibrant democracy, he would have him arrested if he came to Canada. So we're seeing, here they are going after, here's the media going after Pierre Poilievre for saying nasty things about the RCMP, and that they thought he said he'd have former Prime Minister Trudeau arrested, which he really didn't say. And now they are saying we should arrest another Prime Minister, and that's Benjamin Netanyahu. One thing you can say about mainstream media, they are never short on hypocrisy. There's another leader in Canada who just not long ago, less than 2 years ago, pulled off the most remarkable election comeback in the history of that province, maybe of any province. He took there in the BC legislature, he took the BC Conservatives, which were non-existent less than 3 years ago. And then this particular member of another party got booted out. There were no conservatives, provincial conservatives, in the BC legislature. He became the first one, and rapidly, in the period of less than 2 years, went from about 3% in the polls to challenging the NDP in the polls, and ratcheted up the number of seats. And so when the provincial election rolled out, they almost toppled the government. It was very close. And now, as always with conservative parties, only conservative parties know how to do this. When they have been gaining ground or on the cusp of victory, what do? They shoot themselves and shoot their own leaders and shoot the wounded. And that's certainly happening. Not that the leader of the Conservative Party provincially in British Columbia hasn't had some undue criticism coming his way, most recently when another one of the members of the legislature of his party quit his party. He talked about her after, accused her, and talked about the things that she was crying and that maybe there's something wrong with their mental state. You know, the leader of the Conservative Party in British Columbia, John Rostad, has some great initiatives and some good stuff worthy of supporting. But, you know, in politics, or actually even in life, you never gain points by laughing at people if they're under stress. And certainly for a man to be critical of a woman being so stressful that she was perhaps crying and then questioning her mental health, that is not a winner. Not only is it not a good thing to do, just from the point of view of human relations, but not a winner. So keep an eye there. There's a lot of concerns, and it would be sad to see if the Conservatives lose support and the Socialists happen to get elected again and continue to bring the beautiful province of British Columbia into very severe financial positions. In Canada, there is just recently reported a new mental health problem, and it's called climate anxiety. And yes, you guessed it, it's where people who, because they're being fed in many times terribly misleading headlines from mainstream media about the climate and how the world is coming to an end and how we only have days or weeks or hours to live, that causes anxiety among people. And when mainstream media refuses to bring out, absolutely refuses to bring out top scientists around the world who do not agree with the United Nations consensus on the climate, who say, yes, of course, we always have climate issues and we should be always keeping an eye on emissions, but we are not in a climate emergency. The world is not going to explode in some great fireball. And actually, there are positive signs of emission reductions. But when the media doesn't bring out both sides, then it's a lopsided view. And if all people hear every day from the time they get up and look at their devices or newspapers or radio is how we're all doomed, that creates anxiety. You remember, and who can forget, because she's always in the news, Greta Thunberg, and the completely, I give her full credit for being able to be worldwide renowned when, completely uneducated, has never studied these particular areas, but has seemed to won the hearts of media. She's no longer a girl under 18, so I have no problem being critical of her now. that she is supposedly an adult. And she talks about the fact that when she was 11 years old, because of climate reports, she was so anxious that she did not speak for 2 months. She went into her shell, didn't speak for 2 months. Now, a lot of people would probably wish that was the case with her now. But in fact, I just use her as an example to show this thing is real, climate anxiety. And media is largely responsible because of the sensationalist way, the alarmist way in which they bring out these climate reports, and they never have the other side of the scientific issue, where there are thousands of climate scientists and climate environmentalists who do not share the view that the world is ending. But there you go, there is that condition out there. So brace yourself and decide what you're going to take to prevent yourself from getting climate anxiety. You want to talk about anxiety around the world, of course, Canadian grizzly bears are famous, not just for their ferocity, but their size. The average male grizzly bear can easily weigh half a ton and can run at speeds, believe it or not, of close to of over 60 kilometers an hour. That's pretty fast. That's 25 miles an hour for our American friends. And there was just grizzly bear attacks in Canada are rare. I'm saying that because we want our American friends to continue to come up and enjoy our beautiful mountain scenery. They are very rare. They almost always are fatal if they do happen. And a miraculous story of a gentleman by the name of Joe Purdy. He's 63 years old, and he was just a couple of days ago, he was out hunting in, again, the forest of British Columbia. He got attacked by a massive grizzly bear, fought for his life, barely won the fight. He is in hospital now. They say he's no longer in critical, but he's in very serious condition. The grizzly bear literally tore off his skull, tore off part of his face, ate part of his hand, crushed many of his bones and ribs, and he barely survived. They say he's going to pull through. When they asked Joe Purdy's wife what he did to survive, she said it was his boxing skills. While the bear was tearing him apart and thrashing him around, he tried to keep his head and delivered quite a series of blows, good right-hand solid punches to the nose of the grizzly bear. So they're a little bit like killer sharks in that degree, I guess. If you get attacked by one, go for the nose. And he also was listening to Mike Tyson, I guess, at some time in terms of boxing lessons, because in the middle of the fight, he was able to bite off the ear of the grizzly. So, Joe, good for you pulling through, and we're cheering for you. On the culture side, and we know that culture pretty well affects everything else. If you're older, much older than 30, you might not have heard of Jimmy Donaldson, but you've probably heard of MR.BEAST. And certainly I was introduced to MR.BEAST by my young grandkids many years ago. MR.BEAST is, of course, a phenomenon out there in the cyber world and in the internet world. They say he has about 250 million followers. I'll say that again, 250 million followers. He's become hugely wealthy, very ingenious. Started really getting things going viral by holding these contests and giving people awards, huge amounts of money if they were the winner of the contest. One of his most famous one was you would get $500,000 if you could be the last one standing in the circle. He gives away cars, he gives away homes as prizes. He's even given away an island. But he also, it should be noted, a huge donor to philanthropic issues and concerns. So I just want to put that out there. But he's run into some challenges here. One of his businesses is he has been marketing burgers. Yes, that's right, burgers, hamburgers, high-quality burgers, which, of course, are packaged and delivered to your home. And one of his competitors is actually the Planet Hollywood chain of restaurants. They have a derivative restaurant chain that specializes in burgers, and they could see MR.BEAST burgers cutting into their burgers. MR.BEAST has taken, or is taking, the gentleman, Mr. Robert Earl, who owns Planet Hollywood, taking him to court, defamation. He is alleging that the tactic that the Planet folks were using in their own beef burger market was that they started to make and market burgers under the brand name of MR.BEAST's burgers, and that they deliberately made these burgers of inferior quality, so much so that, exactly as they predicted, all over online, people started complaining about MR.BEAST's burgers and calling him a hypocrite and saying he was talking about quality and now he's ripping people off with his inferior burgers. So that is the allegation coming from MR.BEAST. He's going after Mr. Earl. He's going to sue him big time. And let's see what comes of that. But it also goes to show whether the allegations are true or not. In this day and age, fact-checking, folks, checking stories, getting the truth on things is so important, and we're all very prone to what can be happening out there. One possible other side effect of this, it's people are saying maybe it's coincidental, maybe not, but the organization, the business called Beyond Beef, now they market, of course, vegan burgers or vegetarian burgers. There's no meat in them at all. Just in the last 2 days, their stock has jumped 60% in the market. 60%, that's huge. I know, we're all looking at different types of crypto, or we're looking at gold, or we're looking at oil stocks, whatever it might be. Whoever thought that in a 2-day period, Beyond Beef would have jumped 60%? Two reasons are being given. One, they did make an announcement that the Walmart chain is going to be picking up Beyond Beef burgers and marketing them. And some were wondering if this controversy with MR.BEAST and the whole notion of inferior burgers has got people concerned or upset, and are more people moving to vegetarian burgers just when we've been hearing that they're moving away from those. Who knows? But it shows, folks, everything, almost everything is downstream of culture. If you've got a beef, let me know. Let me hear about it in the comments. Thanks for following. We'll talk to you tomorrow.